Im Jahre 2173 wird es natürlich futuristische Fahrzeuge, Polizeiroboter und Vergnügungsmaschinen geben. Zum Glück ist da noch Woody Allen. Heute Abend nennen wir ihn Woody Allen. Und jetzt sofort zum Jahr 1931, als ein genialer Schriftsteller sich ausmalte, man könne bald Babys im Labor herstellen. Dieser Herr, Aldous Huxley, der zu viel Fantasie hatte, ist häufig in der schönen neuen Welt herumgereist.
Sounds of the brave new world, of test tube and decanter, of hissing injectors and gurgling blood substitutes. We are inside the London Hatchery and Conditioning Centre, and this is the fertilizing room, an enormous laboratory where the temperature is never allowed to fall below 98.6. And here comes the Director of Hatcheries and Conditioning in person.
Today, I just want to give you a general idea of things. These are the incubators, and here is the week's supply of ova, kept at blood heat. Now here, we immerse the eggs into a warm bouillon containing free-swimming spermatozoa. Immersion continues until the eggs are all fertilized. Oh, and over here is where we bottle the alphas and betas. In short, gentlemen, the perfect process for manufacturing healthy babies.
Here is a man who wrote, a book which wasn't just a bestseller for a few years, but has lasted right through the century. And you have to read it if you want to know, not just about the 1930s, but if you want to know about utopias and possible utopias and what science might do, and it looks as if is going to be able to do, and how you might form your moral ideas concerning that, then you must read this book. It's essential.
Wenn man Schöne neue Welt heute liest, merkt man schnell, warum Aldous Huxley bei einigen als Prophet der Moderne gilt. Obwohl das Buch der Zukunft 6 Jahrhunderte vorausspielt, wo Fließbanderfinder Henry Ford Gott ist, Menschen in Massenproduktion hergestellt und die Gefühle durch Drogen gesteuert werden, beschwört Schöne neue Welt vor allem die Gegenwart herauf.
Sie erzählt ihm immer von der hübschen Musik, die aus dem Kasten kommt. Von den netten Spielen und den köstlichen Gerichten und Getränken. Vom Licht, das angeht, wenn man ein kleines Ding in der Wand drückt. Von den Bildern, die man hören, fühlen und riechen kann. Von den blauen, grünen und silbernen Häusern so hoch wie Berge. Alle sind glücklich. Nie ist jemand traurig oder verärgert und jeder gehört zu jedem. Da gibt es die Kästen, in denen man alles sieht, was am anderen Ende der Welt vorgeht. Und Babys in sauberen, kleinen Flaschen. Alles ist so sauber, kein Gestank, kein Schmutz. Kein Mensch ist einsam. Alle leben zusammen, sind glücklich und zufrieden. Jeden Tag herrscht nur Glück.
I projected these things 500 or 600 years into the future, and it is rather alarming to find that only 27 years later, quite a number of these forecasts have already come true, and come true with a vengeance.
Dies ist die Geschichte von den Schwierigkeiten eines Propheten im technischen Zeitalter. Von einem, der mit Hilfe der Dichtkunst eine wissenschaftliche Welt verstehen will. Von einem liberalen Humanisten, der an die selektive menschliche Fortpflanzung glaubte. Die Geschichte eines Lebens, das einigen nur wie eine Reise vom Zynismus zum Mystizismus erschien. Anderen dagegen wie ein privilegierter Weg aus der Finsternis zur Erleuchtung.
Billionen von quicklebendigen Spermatozoen. Nur ein armer Noah darf sich aus diesem Chaos Überlebenschancen ausrechnen. Und weniger als einer von diesen Billionen hat Aussichten, ein neuer Shakespeare, Newton oder Donne zu werden. Der eine war ich.
Auch wenn er kein Shakespeare, Newton oder Donne war, so war er doch kein gewöhnlicher Sterblicher. In dem Samen steckten die Gene von Aldous' Großvater Thomas Henry Huxley, der viktorianische Verfechter von Darwins Evolutionstheorie. Und die Eier, mit denen dieser vereint wurde, trugen die Chromosomen seines großartigen Onkels Matthew Arnold in sich, ein Humanist, Dichter und Verfechter der Künste. Dieses Erbe unterschied ihn von Geburt an von anderen.
He simply from very, very early on had a passion for learning and a passion for knowing. And as a little boy, he used to sit and think. And but what was particular about him is not so much the inheritance, but something about him that made him quite extraordinary. I mean, I talked to people who are now no longer with us, who knew him when he was a little boy. And it's not a word I carelessly used, there was an otherness about Aldous.
Es war eher ein unerwarteter Zufall als seine natürlichen Gaben, die sein Anderssein ausmachten. Eines Morgens im Jahr 1911, als er in Eton war, wachte er mit verquollenen und entzündeten Augen auf. Seine eigentümliche Weltsicht war bedingt durch eine weitere Verschlechterung.
And it left him for 1 year entirely blind. I mean, to the extent of having to walk with a guide. And he learned Braille. And it was quite uncertain whether he could ever see again.
I think the blindness was a crucial event in his life, coming when he was so young, and so far as he knew, not curable. One thing was that he was immensely courageous about it. It seems to me that to be able to face that ordeal and joke about it as he did, he said that the great advantage of blindness was that you could read in bed without getting your hands cold because you read Braille under the big clothes. Anyone who could do that had got immense courage. But another thing I think the blindness did was, curiously, to not to switch him towards science, but to sharpen in some ways his interest in science, because the workings of the eye, exactly how the retina worked and so on, had been a very big thing, of course, in Darwinism. I mean, Darwin and Huxley both thought of the development of the eye as the great thing the evolutionists had to explain. So I think it sharpened his scientific interest in, it gave a very personal feeling about science, and he was almost, as it were, an experiment in himself.
Es ist seltsam, welch verschiedene Erscheinungsformen ein Ding hat, wenn man es recht bedenkt. Und je mehr man darüber nachdenkt, desto unklarer und mysteriöser wird alles. Was handfest erschien, verschwindet. Was klar und durchschaubar war, wird völlig mysteriös. Schau, es ist nur eine Form, die das Licht bricht. Für ein Kind, das noch nicht versteht, was es sieht, ist es nur ein geformter Farbfleck. Angenommen, wir betrachten es mal chemisch. Diese Atome, die mehr oder weniger aus Elektronen bestehen, die um einen geladenen Kern herumschwirren, stammen von Elementen, die sich in architektonischen Mustern zu komplizierten Molekülen aufbauen. Es gibt 2 Existenzformen meiner Hand. Wenn ich sie bewege, gleitet sie durch dein Bewusstsein ebenso wie über deine Haut. Universum schichtet sich auf Universum. Individuell und eigen.
Well, the first thing that I think that drew him towards scientific ideas was that they provided an entirely new way of viewing the world, which was to him astonishingly exciting, and to many people in the early 20th century. A new way of viewing everything, really, as simple things. There's a scene, I think it's in Those Barren Leaves, where one of the characters, a girl, takes off a dress, or takes off a jumper or something of this kind, and so she has bare arms, and he says that the warmth of her arms raised the surrounding temperature by 100 billionth of a degree. You know, that sort of view of the woman as a kind of heating coil was very new and interesting to him. And there's another bit where is talking really about the First World War, which is a thing one mustn't leave out. The First World War, which changed a lot of people's notions of how much human feeling mattered and how you could view it with equanimity.
Genau in diesem Moment, fuhr er fort, ereignen sich an jeder Ecke der Welt die fürchterlichsten Schrecken. Menschen werden zerquetscht, zerfetzt, aufgeschlitzt, übel zugerichtet. Ihre toten Körper verfaulen und ihre Augen verwesen mit dem Rest. Angst- und Schmerzensschreie vibrierten mit einem Tempo von 335 Metern in der Sekunde durch die Luft. Nach 3-sekündigem Weg sind sie völlig unhörbar. Das sind erschreckende Tatsachen, aber genießen wir deshalb das Leben weniger? Ganz sicher nicht.
In den frühen 20er Jahren tauchte in der Literaturszene eine neue Stimme auf. Eiskalt in der wissenschaftlichen Beobachtung menschlicher Grausamkeit, chirurgisch im Sezieren moderner Ethik. Diese Stimme schärfte der junge Huxley in seinem ersten eigenen Wohnsitz, Garsington Manor. Ein friedvoller Zufluchtsort, erbaut von der Gesellschaftsdame Lady Ottoline Morrell. Hier traf er die geflüchtete Belgierin Maria Nies, die seine erste Ehefrau und Beraterin werden sollte. Sie half ihm bei der beschwerlichen Suche nach einem Weg in die Außenwelt. Garsington war auch ein Treibhaus für seine aufblühende Intelligenz, eine Zufluchtsstätte für die größten Denker der Zeit, D.H. Lawrence, Bertrand Russell, T.S. Eliot und Virginia Woolf.
It was certainly a refuge from the pain of the First World War. So many of the people he'd been at college with were being reported dead or missing. Here in the Oxfordshire countryside, he spent his days wood chopping, reading, making hay with Clive Bell, and he began to develop as a sort of literary man. And his reading begins to develop. He begins to read French symbolists and begins to review for the New Statesman and the Nation, and begins to project himself as a literateur.
Diese Welt der Dichter und Denker inspirierte ihn zu seinem ersten Roman. Eine Gesellschaft auf dem Lande, Chrome Yellow. Dieses Werk begründete seinen Ruf als Stimme einer Generation, die von der alten Welt enttäuscht ist und sich vor der neuen fürchtet.
Oh, I think it dazzled. You see, it was what was then considered cynicism, the openness, the erudition, and it was new and it was just right, you know, it covered the immediate post-war period and then the early 20s and the later 20s. And anybody who was young and adolescent or growing up then, I mean, adored it. It was brilliant.
Yeah, I think cynicism is not exactly the right word, because I know what it means, that he seemed apart from human feelings, even to despise human feeling. I think there was something in Huxley that was very badly hurt early on. He seemed to me to despise human feeling and human beings altogether.
Verachtung hin oder her, jedenfalls fürchtete Huxley sie, wenn sie in Massen auftraten und lautstark politische Rechte einforderten. Seine Angst war so groß, dass er sich wie viele Intellektuelle der 20er Jahre für die Eugenik stark machte. Eine Theorie, die besagt, dass gesellschaftliche Harmonie nur durch selektive Fortpflanzung erreicht werden könne.
Huxley came from a time, and Huxley came from a family that was very much concerned with human quality. The idea was that we could improve our machines, therefore we could improve our people, and if we didn't improve our people, then nature would inevitably take its course and we'd evolve into this terrible dystopia. I mean, most utopias, like Huxley's utopia, are in fact not nice places to live. Of course, they're terrible places to live. And being a very patrician individual, he felt, of course, that it was his duty, if only metaphorically, to do something about it. And in that, he was close to many of these scientists and the artists of his day who were clear, keen eugenicists, people who felt that they should do something to change the evolutionary future of the human species, something positive or something negative. H.G. Wells, of course, another great science fiction writer, was a passionate eugenicist. So was George Bernard Shaw. So was Winston Churchill. So, of course, was Adolf Hitler. So there was no split between left and right here.
I think that's really a measure of, though, his sense of heredity, his sense of the kind of genetic inheritance, that you had to kind of stamp out certain types if you were going to alter the social makeup. I don't think we should see him as a sort of crypto-fascist at all. I mean, it's clearly an unpalatable view nowadays. But many people at the time saw eugenics as a way of fast-forwarding to a better future.
It's not only artificial reproduction, of course, it's controlled reproduction. That's taking away from the human being, as it were, the major function of reproducing the race, and putting it into the hands of scientists, of responsible people. And he wanted to do that. I mean, he found that fascinating as an idea that avoided a great deal of human frustration and unhappiness, because what he wanted to do was to, as he says in Brave New World, was to create beings who were exactly adapted to their roles in life. So there will be no feeling of abilities that weren't used.
Schöne neue Welt beschrieb die Ängste einer Zeit, die von der ersten Welle des Massenkonsums überrollt wurde, und beschreibt eine glückliche, aber hilflose Bevölkerung, die in billigen Reizen und geistloser Unterhaltung gefangen ist.
So I think he set himself out to paint a picture of mass happiness and how dreadful that was. Because the things that made people happy were all, in his view, inferior to the high culture that he had been brought up to respect.
1931, als die Wirtschaft zusammenbrach und der politische Extremismus florierte, wurde Huxley zunehmend bewusst, dass die Bedrohung eher vom Massenelend als vom Massenglück herkam. Nach den Recherchen seines jüngsten Biografen wurde seine berühmte Zukunftsvision schon unscharf, als er Schöne neue Welt schrieb.
It starts off as a satire on the global diffusion of American mores, the American way of life. The whole society is predicated on mass consumption and mass production. But I think the deep ambivalence in the book is that he, I think halfway through, literally halfway through writing it, he grew to doubt whether he wanted to write a satire on the American bogey. What he really wanted to write, I think, was a blueprint. But he sort of didn't quite have the nerve to do that either. So I think that, in a sense, his fear of the masses and his sense of wanting to do something for those masses, to radically alter British society, is reflected in the book.
Diese Mischung aus Angst und Sympathie machte es für Huxley unmöglich, sich einem der politischen Pole, Kommunismus und Faschismus, anzuschließen, die den Rest der Welt spalteten. Stattdessen wandte er sich dem Pazifismus in seiner fast mystischen Form zu, wie sie sein Freund, der Radioreporter und Schriftsteller Gerald Heard, ausübte.
Heard allowed Huxley's more alternative side to flourish. He became interested in pacifism because of Heard. In November 1935. But it's interesting that when they're in the Peace Pledge Union, the other figures there, who essentially churchmen and sort of more solid, they became very disenchanted with Huxley and Heard, and the leader of it, Dick Shepherd, at one point says how Gerald Herdy Huxley is becoming.
He and his friends, particularly Gerald Heard, led it rather to extremes. I mean, they thought that if there was a war, what they should do would be to get between the two lines of the fascists and the anti-fascists, the French, I suppose, and the Germans would be, and sort of stand in their way. And they thought that this would either be a sort of a gesture, or it would be successful, and the combating sides would be shamed into not continuing the war. They were extreme, sort of pacifists in a Quaker kind of way.
They believed in meditation and sort of doing exercises which to encourage pacifism, whereas of course, you know, the average membership was just concerned with the threat of fascism.
Aldous was profoundly pessimistic. I mean, he thought of civilization ending up in total collapse. For Aldous, the means were supremely important, and therefore he was really against anti-fascism, in the sense that anti-fascism was certain to lead to world war. And he thought that if there was a world war, and we fought fascism, because of the means that we would have to use in order to conquer fascism, we would become mirror images of the fascists whom we were fighting.
I think one of the basic problems is somehow to find means whereby the extraordinarily violent drives of our instincts and our emotions can be given expression without doing harm either to ourselves or to our neighbors. And this is something which I think that many earlier civilizations and many so-called primitive peoples have thought about.
Der Pazifismus hat vielleicht nicht die Welt vom Krieg erlöst, aber er befreite Huxley von seiner Schreibhemmung. Er fühlte sich inspiriert, geblendet in Gaza, Eiles in Gaza zu beenden, seine Geschichte eines zynischen Müßiggängers auf der Suche nach Erleuchtung. Es sollte sein letzter wesentlicher Roman für ein Vierteljahrhundert werden, und seine Vollendung dauerte 3 Jahre.
And then he finds an end to the book, which is total pacifism and trying to develop the spiritual self. It was a very painful transitional period, and then it was very gradual. I mean, after that, the next step was to leave Europe and be an unknown man in a very large new country.
Das Auto jagte in einen Tunnel und tauchte in eine andere Welt ein. Eine gewaltige, chaotische Vorstadtwelt aus Tankstellen und Reklametafeln, Bauplätzen und Papierabfällen und Kirchen. Katholischen Kirchen wie die Kathedrale von Canterbury, Synagogen, die aussahen wie die Hagia Sophia, christlichen Kirchen mit Pfeilern und Bögen wie Banken, Fressständen, Bars durchgehend geöffnet, Riesengetränken, mach was, fahr herum mit Consol Superbenzin. Der Wagen schoss vorwärts. Astrologie, Zahnenmystik, Übersinnliches. Drive-ins, Meile um Meile, endlos. Teure Menüs, Rieseneistüten, Jesus rettet dich. Feine Spirituosen, geh in die Kirche und fühl dich die Woche über besser. Ein Immobilienbüro in Form einer ägyptischen Sphinx. Jesus kommt bald. Beverly Pantheon, der etwas andere Friedhof. Vorbei an einem Rosenkreuzertempel, an 2 Katzen- und Hundekliniken, an einer Schule für Trommlerinnen, Sunset Boulevard, Beverly Hills. Die Umgebung veränderte sich. Vornehme Gärten auf beiden Seiten der Straße. Zwischen den Bäumen Fassaden von nagelneuen Häusern, alle sehr geschmackvoll. Das ist das Haus von Harold Lloyd, sagte der Fahrer. Und das gehört Charlie Chaplin. Ja, Sir.
Das wurde Huxleys schöne neue Welt. Amerika. In den späten 30er Jahren ließ er sich in Kalifornien nieder und fand ein neues Garsinken der Talente und Ideen. Charlie Chaplin, Igor Stravinsky, Orson Welles. Kein berühmter Name aus der neuen kalifornischen Gemeinde fehlte seinem respektablen Adressbuch.
Hollywood was Los Angeles was an ideal place at the time. Ideal in one way, because it was a place where you could hold on, hold fast to any idea, anything went. There were certainly no inhibitions and no ideas that you couldn't pursue. And it enjoyed the, how should I say, the symbol of a country that had fought the war and contributed to the victory. It had, America, for those years, stood out as a land of hope.
Neben Hoffnung bot Kalifornien auch ausgefallene neue Ideen, wie etwa die Bates-Methode zur Behandlung seiner Quasi-Blindheit. Sie stellte den therapeutischen Nutzen der Meditation und Selbstkontrolle über chirurgische Eingriffe.
When we came in 1938 in California, he went to see an oculist, and the oculist said, "Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Huxley, but I think you have to prepare yourself for being totally blind in about 3 or 4 years' time." And at the end, I have seen him read a micro-Bible this big, about 4 inches tall, what it is, at 15 paces with a strong light. Now, he couldn't no more do that than fly. But in that place, for the first time, he saw well enough. He said to my mother, "Let me try and drive." I said, "Of course." And there was a long stretch of about 30 miles dead straight. And we go up and down hills, slightly hilly. And he drove on it. Rather terrifying, because he drove me once that way. It wasn't good enough sight for that, but he knew the vague motions of it, and he enjoyed the speed. Clearly, I think, you know, he wanted to put the foot on the accelerator. And my mother was saying, take it easy, Aldous.
Auf der Suche nach klarem Licht und leeren Straßen kam er nach Liano, ein kleiner Ort am Rande der kalifornischen Mojave-Wüste. Es war eine willkommene Einöde, weit genug von Los Angeles entfernt, um in Ruhe denken und schreiben zu können, und nahe genug, um einer Nebenkarriere als Drehbuchautor für Hollywood nachzugehen.
He came out here, it was a wee little farmhouse with an orchard next to it, and quite isolated and alone, and that was one of the things that attracted him to living out here, the isolation for his writing. Another thing that interested him very much when he found out about it was the fact that in 1915 there was a socialist commune that was built out here, flourished for about 2 years. We have a remnant of it here in the back, the old water tower, probably built in 1915, and he wrote his books over here in his studio, which he built himself. It was the site of his writing The Art of Seeing. It also was where he wrote Time Must Have a Stop, which was his book about the transmigration of souls. And Huxley talked about his soul living on here. We have yet to see it, although one night at his studio we heard a rap, 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 rap on the door late at night, and we thought, it's Huxley, he's come back. But upon further investigation, we found a wood rat kicking the wall.
Yes, the desert, of course, has this extraordinary quality of silence, which is quite unlike anything that I know about. And, of course, this immense clarity and the expanse of the sky is something very extraordinary.
What I remember most was the way he spoke of the symbolic power of the desert. He said the emptiness of the desert emptied his own mind and made him think of the desert fathers and the nothingness that they would talk about. But of course that nothingness was not a literal nothingness, it was a no-thingness, because the barrenness of the desert spread a mantle of sameness over the particulars of the world and the way that snow can cover it and bring out the underlying unity.
Obwohl noch immer regelmäßig Europa besuchte, knüpfte Huxley in den 50er Jahren stärkere Bande mit seiner neuen Heimat Amerika. 1956, ein Jahr nach dem Tod seiner ersten Frau Maria, heiratete er die Musikerin und Psychotherapeutin Laura Achera im Rahmen einer Feier, die den Freigeist des kalifornischen Lebens ausdrücken sollte.
He told me that he had seen that there were a Marian chapel. He had taken a trip in the summer, and he said that passing by, he saw that there were chapels where you could be married, and it was very interesting. And we thought both would be wonderful to escape all the ceremonies, you know, and go there. And we took the car one night and we slept there, and then the next morning we went around one of these chapels. And it was very louche. I thought it was sinister. It seemed to me very sinister. But it wasn't, of course. It was just my imagination. And so we just were the two of us. And they said, well, where is your witness? We had no witness. So the lady from the ladies' room was my witness. And then they picked up a man. And the whole thing was very quick.
Well, shall I say it came as a complete shock to me, the fact that he never even thought he might be remarried. And that I didn't even read it in the paper. Somebody told me it was in the paper, so I go buy a newspaper to find out that he was married. He then wrote me a letter saying, rather apologetically, I wish I had written you ahead of time, but it was a spur of the moment. I suppose it must have been, but it was curiously unhappy-making.
Das war Aldous' Übergangsphase vom Zyniker zum Mystiker. Zwar finden sich schon in seinem Frühwerk Elemente des Mystizismus, doch nun nahmen sie zu. Ermutigt durch die Bates-Methode, die sein Augenlicht verbesserte, beschäftigte er sich mit nahezu jeder alternativen Therapie und Philosophie, die ihm in den Weg kam, von der Dianetik bis zur Darmspülung.
He thought that Western medicine couldn't do everything. It was very limited and again bumptious. But he wanted to discover miraculous things. You know, he longed for mystical experiences and felt that he himself was too arid. I mean, he was not a naturally religious man, but he thought that we could not survive by rationalism alone.
This was at the start of the influx of Asian spirituality into America. And of course, then there's a question of one individual, Huxley, in this, but it is not insignificant the fact that this cluster of intellectuals there, looking affirmatively on wisdom from abroad, had a good part in opening the sluice gates, you might say, of Asian spirituality in the West.
He had studied the mystics. He has already written several books on that. And when he understood the possibility of chemical changes. Chemical changes can come through something that you ingest, or through fasting, through prayer. There is a chemical changes when we do anything. When we eat spaghetti, we change too, yeah? So he was interested, and of course that was a very deep, deep discovery, that this change could be brought about from a drug that is so small that it's invisible.
Seit den frühen 50er Jahren hatte er unter der Aufsicht des britischen Psychiaters Humphrey Osmond mit Mescalin und LSD experimentiert. In der Folge dieser Experimente prägte Osmond den Ausdruck psychedelisch und Huxley schrieb Die Pforten der Wahrnehmung, The Doors of Perception. Ein Essay, der eine völlig neue Drogenkultur inspirierte und einer führenden Rockband ihren Namen gab. Für seine Kritiker zu Hause in Großbritannien war dies der Beweis, dass er mit seiner Heimat auch den Verstand verloren hatte.
Ich schluckte meine Pille um 11 Uhr. 1,5 Stunden später saß ich in meinem Arbeitszimmer und blickte gespannt auf eine kleine Glasvase. In der Vase waren nur 3 Blumen. Eine voll erblühte Portugalrose, Muschelrosa, mit einer wärmeren, flammenderen Tönung am Grund jedes Blütenblatts. Eine große, magentarote und cremeweiße Nelke und auf gekürztem Stängel die blassviolette, sehr heraldische Blüte einer Schwertlilie. Das kleine Sträußchen brach alle Regeln des herkömmlichen guten Geschmacks. Beim Frühstück an diesem Morgen war mir die lebhafte Disharmonie seiner Farben aufgefallen. Aber darauf kam es nicht mehr an. Jetzt blickte ich nicht mehr auf ein ungewöhnliches Blumenarrangement, sondern sah, was Adam am Morgen seiner Erschaffung gesehen hatte. Das Wunder des bloßen Daseins in jedem Moment.
And he went into a beautiful place. It's all written up where he wrote to Humphrey Osmond a report on this. And he said, finally, you have to say those almost embarrassing words, God is love.
You know, when he thought that he had made the breakthrough through mescaline, through LSD, to some kind of ultimate reality, well, for one thing, what was it like? He said in an interview that when you reach the ultimate mystical breakthrough, you discover that in some way, despite everything, the universe is all right. Well, you know, is it worth going that far to find out something like that? And that, I mean, the message was so platitudinous, and also the belief so illogical. Why should it be that you reach ultimate reality through mescaline or LSD rather than through, having lumbago or toothache or any other kind of physical disturbance? You feel that the earlier Huxley would have disposed of such ideas in moments.
Well, I think the people who would benefit most of all are professors. And this, I think it would be extremely good for almost anybody with fixed ideas and with a great certainty about what's what, to take this thing and to realize that the world he has constructed is by no means the only world, that there are these extraordinary other types of universe which we may inhabit and which we should be very grateful for inhabiting, I think.
Durch die Glastür trat ich unter eine Art Pergola hinaus, die zum Teil von einer Kletterrose bedeckt ist, zum Teil von Lattenstäben. Die Sonne schien und die Schatten der Stäbe bildeten ein Zebramuster auf dem Boden und über Sitz und Lehne eines Liegestuhls, der hier unter der Pergola stand. Dieser Liegestuhl, werde ich ihn je vergessen? Wo die Schatten auf seine Leinwandbespannung fielen, wechselten Streifen eines tiefen, aber glühenden Indigoblaus mit Streifen eines so hellen Leuchtens ab, dass es schwer zu glauben war, sie könnten aus etwas anderem als blauem Feuer sein. Eine, wie mir vorkam, unendlich lange Zeit blickte ich hin, ohne zu wissen, ja sogar ohne wissen zu wollen, was sich da mir gegenüber befand. Diese Abfolge azurblauer Schmelzofentüren, die durch Klüfte unergründlichen Enzianblaus getrennt waren. Es war unaussprechlich schön, fast in erschreckendem Maß wundervoll. Und plötzlich hatte ich eine Ahnung davon, wie es ist, wahnsinnig zu sein.
His encouragement, in a way, of the use of drugs, relatively innocent in those days, was part of this desire to feed an appetite that wanted to understand phenomena, and that it wasn't, I wouldn't go as far as saying that he was experimenting with that, but he was just himself so often transported into a world illuminated by the greater understanding of the phenomena of nature, that he wanted everybody to share in that.
Der Drang zum Teilen erhielt einen unerwarteten Schub, als Huxley 1960 am Institut für Technologie in Massachusetts lehrte. Gleich um die Ecke heckte Timothy Leary noch viel ehrgeizigere Pläne in Sachen psychedelische Experimente aus. Der Mann, der eine ganze Generation zum Einklinken, Anturnen und Ausflippen einlud. Diese Pläne sollten die intellektuellen Hätschelkinder dazu bringen, mitten ins Herz der politischen Öffentlichkeit zu stoßen.
I feel that any responsible adult who can demonstrate sociological acceptable reasons for using these drugs in his research, in his own personal spiritual life, in his self-growth, in his pursuit of knowledge or whatever. A person who's responsible and adult should be allowed to have a license so that he could use these substances.
When I found that he was just down the road, Massachusetts Avenue, with real trembling awe, I picked up the phone and called down there, and there was this man I idolized. And I explained to him what we were doing, and he said, now let me get this straight. You chaps over there at Harvard, you have authority to use psychedelic drugs and to research consciousness? And I said, yes, sir. He said, what's your address? I'm getting a cab, and I'll be there in 5 minutes.
Es war ein Kampf ums Nirvana. Abgesehen davon, dass Leary und seine Genossen schon nach wenigen Monaten Zusammenarbeit in eine Richtung abdrifteten, die Huxley inakzeptabel fand. Aldous wollte, dass LSD unter kontrollierter Aufsicht verabreicht würde. Leary dagegen wollte es ins Wasserreservoir von Los Angeles kippen.
Aldous Huxley belonged to the classic European Eastern culture. It was very elitist. Not in the sense of class, but in the sense of they weren't running around trying to sign up applicants. We were Americans, and we were imbued with the American sense of, hey, this should be shared. I think he saw me as some crazed Irish poet that was getting out of hand here.
High winds and dry brush send a flash fire roaring through the elegant Hollywood Hills suburb in California. Residents and firemen work together.
1961 fiel das Haus der Huxleys in Deronda, einem der immer wiederkehrenden Buschfeuer in Hollywood Hills, zum Opfer.
Among the mansions destroyed is that of famed author Aldous Huxley. Into the next day, the ruins smolder, creating new danger that another rising wind might rekindle the flames.
And all of a sudden it was there. The flame did everything. And so I became sort of enchanted with that, and I wouldn't do anything. Then Aldous came downstairs and said, but we had to take something out. And so he took some suits, and I took 2 or 3 suits, and then he took Island, the manuscript of Island. He was working on that. Was the last chapter, in fact, which is the most beautiful. And I took my violin, and I took, it's very strange. Really, I don't know what happened to my mind. I took only the things that were insured. I left all the others in. And we went, and it was disastrous.
And when that went, kind of, not a part of him, but a memory of a part of him left. It was in a curious kind of way. Not that he was part of the object as an object, but part as a collector. Why did he pick up this rather nice cat, figure of a rather nice black pottery cat? 25 cents at a market in Mexico or something. Well, because it was pretty, and he liked it. It hit his eye, and he brought it back. Well, there's these kinds of memories which disappeared when his house disappeared.
Das Buch, das Laura aus den Flammen gerettet hatte, war wichtig für Huxley. Eiland war sein erster umfangreicher Roman nach 2 Jahrzehnten, mit Aufsätzen über Philosophie und Drogen. Es sollte eine konstruktive Zukunftsvision sein, basierend auf seinen Erfahrungen der Vergangenheit. Eine echte, schöne neue Welt, um die alte, furchterregende abzuschütteln. Angesiedelt auf der imaginären Tropeninsel Pala beschrieb der Roman eine postindustrielle Gesellschaft, die den zerstörerischen inneren Spannungen der mechanisierten Welt abschwor und stattdessen eine neue, ausgewogene Ökologie von Geist und Körper feierte.
But it's a fantasy, it's a kind of reverse Brave New World about a society in which serious efforts are made to develop the potentialities of individuals to the full. It's an extremely difficult thing to write, because it's much easier to write about negative things than about positive.
This is an ideal picture.
It's an ideal, but I hope not a stratospheric ideal.
Everything that is written in Island is has a possible realization. It's not just fantasy. Those methods, those recipes are being already tried in different cultures, in different times. It's not just an imaginative society, it's a possible society.
Vor allem erlaubten wir uns nicht mehr, Kinder in die Welt zu setzen, als wir ernähren und kleiden konnten, um sie zu so etwas wie erfüllten Menschen aufzuziehen. Da es keine Überbevölkerung gibt, haben wir von allem reichlich. Trotzdem widerstanden wir der Versuchung des Westens, übermäßigem Konsum. Wir machen uns nicht für Koronarthrombosen anfällig, indem wir 6-mal so viel gesättigte Fettsäuren in uns hineinschlingen als nötig, oder hypnotisieren uns in den Glauben hinein, dass wir mit 2 Fernsehern glücklicher sind als mit einem. Und wir verbrauchen nicht 1/4 unserer Gesamterzeugnisse, um den 3. Weltkrieg vorzubereiten.
Given the hydrogen bomb, we're obviously in imminent danger. And also, given this kind of culture which causes us to spend an enormous proportion of our resources on the armament race, we are not going to be able to solve the ecological problem of man upon the earth. We are not going to be able to solve the problem of a species which is increasing at the rate of 50 million per annum on a limited environment. I mean, this is going to require all our goodwill and all our intelligence and all our knowledge.
Eiland war kein Erfolg bei den Kritikern. Wie die polarisierte Welt, die es ablehnte, war es selbst gespalten. Teils Roman, teils Flugblatt, teils Erfindung, teils Tatsachen. Wie so viele seiner Werke war es ein Kulturmischling ohne echte Heimat.
Island was badly received critically, and one can see why. The exposition dominates the book rather than plot. Anthony Burgess once said that Huxley equipped the novel with a brain. I think, by the time you get to Ireland, you sometimes feel that Huxley equipped the novel with a swami. And it sort of destabilizes it as a fiction.
Am Ende seines Lebens schien Huxleys Hoffnung auf Vereinigung der Pole des modernen Lebens diese eher noch hervorzuheben. Er versuchte Wissenschaft und Kunst, Ost und West, Körper und Seele, Intuition und Ideen zusammenzubringen und benutzte genau die Kulturformen, die sie eher voneinander fernhalten. Die literarische Erzählung, die dokumentarischen Fakten widerstand und das Kunstwerk, das intellektuelle Analysen vermied.
In a way, I think maybe it's slightly fraudulent, what my pretensions to be a novelist. Perhaps I really am an essayist who uses the novelistic form, but who enjoys it very much.
I think he's such a different kind of writer. Great writer is a difficult thing to say of him. I actually don't think that a writer who portrays human beings in quite so limited a way would, for me, be a great writer.
As a literary writer, I think he is not as good as whole spectrum of people thought when he was young, and he's not as bad as some of the critics thought. He himself gave it up almost deliberately, to improve as a writer, to give up art because he wanted to find out and try what to do his task was.
Personally, I see this as a virtue. That is, he didn't care. That wasn't the first thing in his life. I remember his remarking once, truth lies at the bottom of a very dirty well. And he was more interested in truth than he was in retaining any kind of a public image. And so for those of us in my generation and some older than myself, there's a very commanding presence in our century.
1962, kurz nach der Veröffentlichung von Eiland, entdeckte man einen Tumor in Huxleys Hals. Ein Jahr später war er ans Bett gefesselt.
I knew that he was dying, but he didn't ever seem to want to talk about it. So I didn't force it, of course. But he knew then, just a few hours before. And he wrote a note, "If I go," he said. And then he said, he gave his own prescription. He said 100 microgram of LSD, intramuscular. And so I did. I gave him an injection, and he went very quietly. I spoke to him to let go and go on. And then he squeezed my hand at a certain point. It was still possible for him to squeeze my hand, but he had that expression that he took exactly when he was in a very static frame, in a static state. He had a wonderful expression in his face, and he went very, very, very easily, very quietly.
Die Berichte über seinen Tod drangen nicht gleich nach draußen, denn am selben Nachmittag lief die Nachricht ein, dass Präsident Kennedy ermordet worden war. Es passte vielleicht ganz gut, dass ein Dasein, das sich so sehr mit der Erklärung der modernen Zeit befasste, in einem der entscheidendsten Momente zu Ende ging.